Did you watch Ted Lasso? Though I can't condone the colorful language of player-turned-coach Roy Kent, regardless of what Eli may tell his Sunday school teachers he hears at home. Ted Lasso is a pure delight. Ted, played by Jason Sudeikis, is an overly earnest, heartwarmingly cheesy American football coach hired to coach an English soccer team. The show is very funny. It's very witty. And it's one of the few things that I've seen that has left me feeling better about this world for having seen it. I am inordinately excited for season 4. One particular scene is on constant replay in my brain. The show's villain, former team owner and philandering ex-husband Rupert, is baited into challenging Ted to a game of darts. The stakes rise beyond money as Rupert believes he will easily best Ted as the locals in the pub look on. After making the wager, Rupert says, "Oh, I forgot I had these on me," as he pulls out a very expensive dart set, before Ted admits that he has been playing with his non-dominant hand. "You know, Rupert," Ted said, "guys have been underestimating me my entire life. And for years, I never understood why. It used to really bother me. Then one day I was driving my little boy to school, and I saw this quote by Walt Whitman painted on the wall there. It said, 'Be curious, not judgmental.' I like that." Making impossible throw after impossible throw, Ted continued, "All them fellas who used to belittle me, not a single one of them were curious. They thought they had everything all figured out, so they judged everything and they judged everyone. If they were curious, they would have asked questions. Questions like, 'Have you played a lot of darts, Ted?' To which I would have answered, 'Yes, sir.'" Ted proceeded to win, securing not only a consequential prize, but teaching us all a vital lesson along the way. Be curious, not judgmental. October 7th, 2023 was the most devastating day for Jewish life since the Holocaust, and its echoes continue to reverberate throughout society. In Israel, October 7th tore asunder the very communities working most closely for peaceful coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians. Eulogies for the murder victims and the desperate pleas of families of the hostages tell the stories of humanitarians who volunteered to drive the Gazan people to Israeli hospitals, who offered higher wages than could ever be offered in Gaza, where most every dollar was diverted to the terror infrastructure. Yachad Ninatseach, together we will win, was on billboards and bumper stickers, and every Israeli was united to bring the hostages back and to end Hamas's reign of terror against Israel and against the Palestinian people. Until other agendas, disagreement over the war's top priority, political survival for the ruling coalition, a messianic desire to resettle Gaza, until other agendas eroded that short-lived sense of unity. In America, too, the Jewish community united to rally political and popular support, together with dollars, to meet immediate needs in Israel after October 7th. Jews, right, left, and center, prayed and acted in support of the war against Hamas and for the release of the hostages, until our unity collapsed as well. Intergenerational divides about how Israel is using its power, the conflicting territorial claims of the Jewish and Palestinian peoples, and now even concerns about the centrality in Judaism of Zionism itself are challenging our internal communal cohesion. So in Israel and in America alike, instead of a persevering unity born from this existential threat, Jewish peoplehood feels as if it is on the precipice of collapse. Everything about what's happening in Israel and Gaza right now is hard. It's complex, it's multidimensional, and the Jewish community is externalizing our angst about it in destructive ways. I know some of you are hoping for a sermon about Israel this high holidays that will uplift those you uplift or condemn those you condemn, so that you know that you are not alone, or so that you have cause to question whether this is the right community for you. And I'm certainly, there we go. I'm certainly willing to share my brokenness and heartache and pain. I think we all feel that. About how much I want the hostages to come home and this terrible war to end. But the reality is that there doesn't seem to be a simple solution. And there's not a single thing I can do to influence that outcome from this pulpit. I can't change Benjamin Netanyahu. I can't change Hamas's leadership. So I'm going to do something that's going to feel even more uncomfortable. I'm going to try to change you. How long has it been since you have asked a question? Be curious, not judgmental. In their book, When You Wonder You're Learning, the first of the books that our Torah Center director, Steph McFerrin, invited our teachers to read this year as part of their professional development, authors Greg Baer and Ryan Rajewski codify the understandings and the values that made Fred Rogers so very successful. It's a little surprise that curiosity tops their list. Curiosity, they write, leads to exploration. Exploration leads to questions, and questions threaten the status quo. When we're curious, we start to ask, and the more we ask, the more we are likely to know. Carnegie Mellon professor George Lowenstein, a great-grandson of Sigmund Freud who seems to have stayed in the family business, teaches that a gap always exists between what we know and what we want to know. Our willingness to close that gap is related to having enough knowledge that we know more knowledge must exist, and that gaining that knowledge would benefit us. Put more simply, though I realize doing so shortchanges Lowenstein's fascinating work, curiosity is the sweet spot between knowing enough about a subject to care and not so much that we perceive ourselves to be experts. True experts, he says, are the most curious among us, the ones who ask the most questions, because they keep the focus on what they don't know rather than on what they do. Those who think they have everything figured out become judgmental, like Rupert, and those who seek to know more become experts. So why aren't people? Why wasn't Rupert? Why aren't we more curious? Perhaps we've internalized lessons about curiosity's association with danger. Think Lot's wife, or the old saying about cats, Baer and Rajewski say. Perhaps social expectations and the need for tact leads us to stop indulging our curiosity over time. There are just some questions I've learned the hard way it's not polite to ask. I believe both of these are partly true, but I suspect there's also something else at play. We human beings are hardwired to resist complexity. That which requires less effort and takes up less space in our already overtaxed brains. A simple truth is an intellectual cozy blanket against the chill of uncertainty. That which is convoluted, that which is hard, requires greater inputs of time and energy than we often have to give. Okay, sometimes that may be laziness, but I think it's more existential than that. When the complexities we face aren't theoretical or academic, but connected to something over which we have strong emotions, something that feels visceral to us, canceling our curiosity becomes a means of self-preservation, a means of preserving some sense of control. And few things are as emotional and visceral in the Jewish community as Israel. Israel lives at the nexus of our religion, our culture, and our identity, because it is so close to us, because it is so important, and because we are hardwired to want things to be easy, we have allowed our curiosity to wither and die. We cast instant judgment on those whose facts or opinions, our truths, are different from our own incomplete facts or opinions or truths. Instead of preserving us then, that resistance to complexity, the canceling of our curiosity, is breaking us apart. We are too small of a people to be small people. We must be curious and not judgmental. Popular Israeli author Edgar Keret wrote in the New York Times about being confronted at an anti-war protest in Israel. When the speaker realized that Keret wouldn't respond with his words, Keret reports he quickly recalibrated and realized he could keep talking unhindered. All of a sudden, the whole scenario seemed less like a political dispute and more like the modern Tower of Babel. It's a story in which we're all living in a building, trying to reach the clouds. It keeps growing and growing, and we keep climbing with it ever higher and higher, with more knowledge, with a little bit more confidence, with more purpose, yet somewhere along the way, we lose our fundamental ability to communicate. Each of us is trapped in our own separate feeds, our own separate languages, with different facts and different conclusions, which only grow, he writes, more solid when we stop looking at the tower's walls and instead look into one another's eyes. We see something completely foreign. A difficult truth is that the world's best minds and foremost experts can't seem to resolve this crisis, regardless of their prestige or their power, and regardless of what college students seem to want you to believe. A heartbreaking truth is that we can't solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict from our suburban American homes. What we can do, what we can solve, is when two Jews at counter demonstrations in Israel or across the dinner table here in America look into one another's eyes and see something that's only foreign. That's on us. Lest my words be misunderstood, let me be crystal clear. Anti-Semitism is a light sleeper indeed, and it seems shockingly hard for people to express legitimate concern or criticism for Israel's prosecution of this war without demonizing Jews or delegitimizing Israel's right to exist, sometimes even from within the Jewish community itself. I'm not arguing that you should seek to converse with those trying to do us harm. I'm a firm believer that when somebody tells you who they are, we should listen. Views that demonize the Jewish religion or delegitimize Israel's right to exist are outside of the tent, regardless of who speaks them. But I worry that we have all otherwise drawn those tent flaps so close that we are in ideological shelters built for a single human being. There has to be space inside the tent of Jewish peoplehood for both Edgar Keret and for his foil. There has to be space for both the grandfather, whose formative experiences of Israel are steeped in fear for her physical survival, and for the granddaughter who fears for its moral authority. There has to be space for the Jew who believes that the two-state solution is the only path forward as a Jewish and democratic state. And there has to be space for the Jew who believes that the already moribund peace process was slaughtered with the innocents on October 7th. There has to be room for the Jew who believes international recognition of Palestinian national aspirations is not actually bad for Israel, because sometimes a forced clean divorce is less messy than cohabitation. And there has to be room for Jews who reflect Israeli sentiment that untimely recognition only rewards Hamas's violence and terror. Holding this space in the big tent of Jewish peoplehood is critical for our future and does nothing less than preventing Hamas victory in the secondary trauma of imploding Jewish peoplehood. something over which only we ourselves have control, not them. Kol Yisrael aravim zeh b'zeh. All Jews are responsible for one another, and that responsibility starts with curiosity. Ask a question. Understand a perspective. Hear a fact. Learn a fact. 99 times out of 100, 999,999 times out of 1,000,000, it's not going to be a revelation to you. It's not actually going to change your thinking. That's not the point. When we think we know everything that there is to know, or when something feels so viscerally evocative to us that we cannot countenance what another person thinks, we become judgmental rather than curious. We push aside even our loved ones as we become anti-experts, people so focused on showing off what we know that we're closed off to other ideas. We can't solve what is happening in Israel and Gaza from this sanctuary, though I desperately wish we could. While we wait for the return of the hostages, while we wait for an end to this war, what we can do is preserve Jewish peoplehood at your dinner table, in your conversations, in your FaceTimes, in interactions with those who share your ideas and with those who don't, so long as they don't seek to cause harm by demonizing Jews or delegitimizing Israel's right to exist. Be curious. Ask questions. Have you played a lot of darts, Ted? Would have saved Rupert from losing a considerable wager. For Jewish peoplehood, there is so much more at stake. We are too small of a people to keep being small people. We must be curious and not judgmental. Shana Tova.